I have a little presentation to kick us off.
Good.
Let me share my screen. Here we are. Let's see. I always wish it would just go into presenter mode. Here we are. Hold on one second. I'm making sure I'm, stop share. I have to make, hold on. I have to do something else to record. There we go. Gerald told me specific instructions and then I promptly forgot them. All right. So it seems like most people here are familiar with Chrismons. Is that correct?
Mhm.
Yeah. So it seems people in Chrismons are, as y'all know, they are the just Christmas ornaments. Oh, come on, work. There we are.
Yeah.
It's primarily, what I loved is it's Christmas or Christian. You'll see it different ways, and the word monogram combined. I thought Christmas and monograms, two of my favorite things. Why not have a hobby dedicated to it? But really, since y'all know this, they're really generally found in more sort of high liturgical churches like Anglican or Episcopalian, the Lutheran churches. And, you know, I would consider us high church Presbyterian. So that's why we used to have them, could have them again. I don't know. They're typically white and gold. So they are, white is the, that's not what I wanted. Sorry, y'all. I'm trying to find my notes and I think it's so, one second. For some reason, my notes aren't popping up. Anyways, they're white and gold. I add silver into mine because I get kind of crazy and don't like to follow the rules. And you could even use variations of colored gold as well. And they're truthfully made out of any material. Since sort of doing a lot more with the children's ministry, there's some great Chrismon activities for kids that you can do paper or felt. I know felt has a strong tradition in our children's ministry, which I still love. And I grew up with styrofoam Chrismons with the sequins and pearl beads, and is it sewing not needles, pins.
Yeah, little pins.
Yep. And then also we had cross stitch ones my mom made on our Christmas tree. There are bead and wire ones I will talk about a little bit. And then of course, any sort of needlework ones, which cross stitch is part of, but or needlepoint like I do. The funny thing is, where do they come from? When I was teaching about Advent and sort of the traditions last year, Chrismons brought up a little bit. And when I was looking in my Advent research, I was trying to figure out where, you know, the 4 Sundays of Advent come from. And truthfully, it was just some Pope decided. When I was looking up the backgrounds of Chrismons, I didn't expect to find a very specific answer, but there is. This is one of those classes I will teach you definite facts. It started in 1957 in Danville, Virginia.
Really?
Frances Kip Spencer. I would be shocked if someone wouldn't be shocked if someone in our church maybe even knew her. She created Chrismons at the Ascension Lutheran Church in Danville. They still have the original Christmas tree, I think, with some of her original designs on there. It's on display. This year, they're moving it outside. It's December 13th to January 2nd. So you can, it's actually, since it's outside, y'all could drive up for the day. Might be a fun activity for Advent. But hers were mainly, I looked at them, are mainly cross stitch, bead and wire, and looked like there was some felting as well. You can actually buy her original books to this day. So if you wanted the original patterns, Chrismons itself is a trademark word by, I think, this church or Miss Spencer's family. So it's kind of funny too, this thing that I thought was, you know, at least the 19th century old, you know, is actually, we can pinpoint to 1957. The one caveat I will say about this is they are using ancient symbols from the 1st and 2nd century church, especially the medieval period. And I will say that while Chrismons, you know, the white and gold embroidery or needlework ones are very specific to 1957, I suspect that we have been putting crosses and Christian symbols on a Christmas tree for many centuries. So at least since the Victorian period. But so I just want to say that. But for the Chrismons, as we know them, they're really sort of dedicated to a very almost local tradition. With Chrismons, usually we do any symbol that's dedicated to Christ's life. So you will see a crown of thorns, you'll see a variety of crosses, like a Greek cross, a Jerusalem cross, a Celtic cross. I have a pattern for that for y'all. You will see a manger. You can see a variety of different Christian or Christ-centered symbols. The truth is with Chrismons, especially coming in from the Presbyterian tradition, we can do whatever we want. Anything that reminds you of your faith. I've mapped out one that's just FPC. If this is where you were born and baptized, you could do the Montreat Gate, you could do Canuga, you could do anything that has reminded you or been a special moment in your faith. I think is really important. Dates of marriage or baptism could also be a Chrismon, since they are part of our faith life. The one thing is, Chrismons are not specifically reformed, so I thought, well, how could we make them even more painfully reformed, as I like everything to be, and really turning them into a teaching moment. So one thing on the Ascension Lutheran Church website that they said was, a Chrismon tree is not complete until you explain the story of Christ by using the symbols or the Chrismons, which I thought was kind of nice. One thing, a big Advent tradition that's great, especially for children, is called the Jesse tree. And we talked a little bit about this last year. It comes from Isaiah 11. A shoot shall come out of the stump of Jesse, and a branch shall grow out of his roots. Isaiah 11, verse 1. It's sort of that the messianic promise, the prophecy of Jesus's arrival coming from the house of David, Jesse being David's father. In a Jesse tree, it's almost like an Advent calendar. It has, and I've seen it varies between who publishes it, but it's about 25, I've seen 29 different symbols that begin with creation and go up to the incarnation. So some of the things that you will see, it really goes for the full biblical narrative. Oh gosh, sorry, Barbara just walked in and startled me. Welcome, Barbara.
Trying to be quiet.
A little high strung, y'all. Maybe I'll cut out my coffee. One, you can start with a tree stump. Is one place people start because it's out of direct quote from the scripture, or some people will do a world for creation. They all have Adam and Eve. What's funny is a big thing that I keep seeing is the snake and the apple seems to be in a lot of Chrismon packages or Jesse tree packages. So people are very focused on original sin, I believe. That was a joke. You will have Noah's Ark, you'll have the ram for the sacrifice of Isaac, Moses, Ruth, the temple. It really varies. And then in the New Testament, we will see, you may have a trumpet announcing the good news of Christ's birth. Mary, Elizabeth, Joseph, John the Baptist, sometimes Zechariah, and always it concludes with Jesus, and various symbols differ for these. Like with Jonah, you may have a little prophet on a raft, or you may have a whale or a fish. Isaac, sometimes you see a ram, sometimes you'll see a dagger. They vary greatly, but you use them like an Advent calendar. That's just a little bit of the background of Chrismons, where they come from, how we can use them, how we can make them very Presbyterian, as I always try to do. Any questions about that?
Robert, I do.
Yeah.
When you, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you well.
Okay. When you say they can be used like an Advent calendar, do you mean like pull one out each day and add it to the tree?
Yes.
Is that what you mean?
Absolutely.
Okay.
There will, a lot of times they come with a little booklet, and so there'll be a special symbol, like we'll do, the world for day one, first day of Advent, and then there'll actually be scripture to go with it. So it's a nice kind of devotional practice as well, but it also, for children, will count the days towards Christmas. Mm-hmm. So each day you would add another one, or almost like opening, your window on your Advent calendar. We put an ornament on the tree.
Okay, so there's a, I'm sorry, I'm kind of new to Chrismons, I guess. So there's a book that kind of leads you through putting them, or there are books about it, I guess.
Yeah, there are lots of books. So you can really pick and choose what your 25 Chrismons would be. So if you want to do a stump but for the first day, or world for creation on the first day, you can do either. You can, change it up. There are set symbols in scripture and sort of timelines that are created, but you can also create your own and combine and divide up which ones you want to do and which ones you don't. So
Oh, okay, thanks.
for some, the sacrifice of Isaac might be a little difficult, especially if you have young children, but you could do the covenant with Abraham and Sarah. That might be a nice one to do. So, and that's also important to the biblical story. So,
Okay. Now, I'm sorry, I'm asking so many questions here. So the book, I mean, I can see how they could say and suggest, okay, you could use this on day 1, use this on day 2, use this on day 3. Are there actual books that have the Chrismons already, developed, created, made, I guess, set?
some of them, some of those.
I know the idea of this is making them, but I just wondered, which I'm interested in making them, but I just wondered if those were available.
The ones I've seen available where the Chrismons are readily made are generally paper. You can print them out. And some of them are more like coloring pages, or they give you instructions on how to do them in felt. I really haven't looked. I'm sure they have them, but I've not looked for, I will say, maybe nicer, more permanent ones that of sort of a complete set, but I'm sure they are out there.
Oh, okay. All right. Thanks.
Yeah. Any other questions? Right. I just wanted to sort of show you samples if you hadn't seen them. The styrofoam ones were the ones we grew up with. I'm sure there's a nicer idea, but as you can see, this one on the left is sort of with the crown for the kingship of Christ, the sovereignty of God. We see glitter and it looks like something glued on. That's a great way to do it. And on the right is a very elaborate one with, looks like gold trim, beads and sewing pins and sequins. And that's sort of what I was kind of used to. It's a really fun activity. I remember at our church, they were so elaborate, children were not encouraged to make them. We were allowed, but not encouraged. Let's just leave it there. But I made it 1 or 2, but I'm sure it calls to fit somewhere. The bead and wire ones are really amazing, and I really love these. I have never made these before. They are extremely elaborate, and they give a really nice 3D quality. These 3 are just samples that Tonda Gridley has made in our church. She is like an expert. She has made some very elaborate ones. I mean, we have the Nativity. I love this Angels on a Ladder. That could be, Jacob's Ladder is traditionally not in the Jesse's tree lineup, but it could be. And again, we have a crown for the sovereignty of God. Tonda, as I said, is the expert on this one. I would absolutely ask her about it. There is a store actually in, it's either Salisbury or Statesville, I always forget which one it is, that is specialty is these sort of bead and wire Chrismons. They do classes, they do kits, can really sort of get you set up if that's sort of the style that you want to. Again, very difficult. There are much simpler ones. We have some on our family Christmas tree where it is a very, very simple wire cross with child beads all over it. So we know who made those in our family. And then the next are needlepoint Chrismons. These are the ones I do. I actually have followed patterns that my mother gave me. I take cross stitch patterns. I have old books from the 70s that my mother sort of handed to me. I got these along with a cross stitch pattern of Duplin County in case anyone needs that as well. Like
Exactly what we did.
Farms of Eastern North Carolina. I'd be happy to share that with you. But so these are actually cross stitch patterns that I generally can just copy, but sometimes they have to be converted for needlepoint just because of the variation. I think they're really fun. They're very simple to do. And these, if you want a cross stitch pattern, I've got a ton of them, or you can Google them. It's very easy to do. They, as you can see, I've done it very simply. They are white with gold metallic or sometimes silver metallic thread. Mine, I have not done the Jessie tree yet. I keep making them and then people want them for Christmas. So I keep giving my supply. I keep trying to make myself my own set, but I run out of time and have to wrap things quickly. So usually by Christmas Day, half my ornaments are missing. But we did on the top, I do a Celtic cross. That is a really nice one since that's the first Presbyterian symbol. We have the lamp, the light unto the world, or also can, for the word. The anchor cross, that's just a wonderful old symbol. I made that for a friend. The shell for baptism, or John the Baptist. You can, if you wanted to do it for Jessie tree, it could be John the Baptist. If we just do it for sort of Chrismons in general, it would be just baptism. Bottom center is Chi and Rho, the first two letters of Christ in Greek. And then I did another Chi and Rho, but also Alpha and Omega. Not my favorite one, but you gotta fill out the tree somehow. The wonderful thing about these is I do square ones only because you can find ornament frames. Pardon? Ornament frames. I'm gonna exit out of this real quick so that I can see everyone. Hold on, let me stop share. Gotta see myself.
I'll lean in.
These are like fantastic. They're at Michael's. I think right now they're like 4 or 5 for $10. They're called Studio Design. They're 2.5 by 2.5 frames. And I will say this, y'all, they are heavy, but plus needlework in them. You need a strong branch on your Christmas tree to hang these things. They even come with a little snowflake that says the year. I usually pop this off because it's just not my taste, but if you're doing these each year, it's kind of nice to see which ones you did which year. A lot of times I just take a black Sharpie and write on the back. Let's see, what I'm saying.
May I ask what gauge was your cloth?
Yes, so it's 13 count.
13, okay.
The supplies I use are, and we can do this, is I cut a canvas of 4x4 or 5x5. If you like to frame stitch, the smallest frame you can find is a 5x5, but really you only need 4x4. It ends up being this.
Okay.
And let me, so I cut out a 4x4 piece, and then I take Sharpie and copy the pattern on, actually it should be this way, copy the pattern onto the canvas. You will read blogs that say, do not use Sharpie. They're lying to you. You can always use Sharpie on your needlepoint. Only use black Sharpie, because colored Sharpie will bleed if it ever gets wet. Black Sharpie, you're fine. And then I just cover it. The key is it's 32 stitches by 32 stitches is exactly the right thing. And you will cut it. I don't mind. Oh, I don't cut that one. Cut this one. Let's see. This is what I was trying to. If you can see this, and it's really difficult. In real needlework, you would not want to do this. I don't know if y'all can see. If you put on speaker view, you may see it larger. You cut the one stitch away, so the needlepoint will not come unraveled. This is terrible to do if you are finishing a pillow, belt, or anything else like this, but because it's going in a frame, it will never move, so you're kind of safe. You just cut one stitch and it will fit perfectly into these little 2.5 by 2.5 frames and be set. You don't have to glue it or anything. It's a tight fit. It will not shift and everything. You don't have to stretch these because they're so small. You really won't do the distortion. I personally do the gold work first, and I use Krynic thread. I use, if you're looking, Pose Point in the Dilworth Shopping Center is the perfect place to go. They'll have all this stuff. I use, they'll help you with the size. It's 13 count, but I use 17 high luster for gold. Sometimes I'll use a solid gold, sometimes I'll do a silver. They also have this great color that's a silver gold mix, and the high luster just looks better. They have regular, it just kind of glitters more in the Christmas tree light. But then I will go over and do a basket weave stitch in the back. You can do, which means you're going diagonally. The reason it's called basket weave is if you're not a needle pointer, it's only because it creates the basket weave. This prevents the canvas from kind of stretching like this, because if you were just to go straight across, it just distorts it more. the basket weave helps keep it kind of at a right angle or straight or side to side, whatever you want to say. If you need a refresher on needlepoint techniques for tent stitch or continental, YouTube is your friend, or needlepoint.com. It's an amazing store in Raleigh. They have the best online store, the best really kind of physical store I've been to. They also have instructional videos on refreshers, but really how-tos. That's actually how I learned how to needlepoint from the get-go. So if it takes a moment, but I'm also very readily available to help you if you need refresher. So that's sort of the short and skinny of how I do mine. If you did 18 count, which means 18 stitches per inch, they are much finer and I think, a little more delicate looking. The only issue with that is they don't quite fit in you would have to do background. You would want to do needlepoint. You'd want to do a little bit more to make them a little more interesting for your tree and to fit in the frame. So 13 count, gets your symbol in, gets you some nice background and fits in the frame. So it is easy to do and easy to go. Any questions on this? I know that's a lot of information, and needlepoint's impossible to teach over, not impossible, but difficult to teach over Zoom. But these are just sort of how I've cheated and figured out how it will work for a simple, nice ornament.
I appreciate the information on the needlepoint shop here in Charlotte, because the only one I was aware of and the one I've been to is the one up in Davidson. There's a needlepoint shop up there.
I think that one closed.
Did it? Has it?
I
haven't been there in, since last October.
I haven't heard anything in my little needlepoint forums. I have not heard anything about it. So maybe I need to check it out, but I don't think it's open. There's one in, I think, Fort Mill, but they're not doing you can't walk in and get your supplies. They're doing curbside service. So unless you know exactly what
you want. Yeah.
The women at Poe's Needlepoint in Dilworth, it's very small. It's shared with the yarn shop.
Yeah.
But have everything you would need.
Okay, good to know.
And if need be, I can send you an exact list of, the fibers I use, but I just find a basic white and a basic gold.
Yeah. I've still got, as I said, I've got a whole needlepoint box from my mom. And she still has frames in there. And, I kept saying, I'm going to do this. And here I am, and I haven't done it yet, but now I have incentive to really get started again.
Robert, what was the first word of the needlepoint store in Dilworth? What's the first word that you said? Poe?
Poe's, P-O''S.
Poe. Okay, thanks.
Poe's Point. And honestly, if y'all are starting out and the one thing about needlepoint is it is sort of an investment when you first, you get 6 needles and $15 scissors and those stuff. If you would like to try this out and want to just do a little kit, I have got too much stuff in my house already. So I'm happy to put together little kits for people to do if you just want to try it out. And then if you really love it, we can, get you started as, the overindulgent hobby that I like it to be. So please do not go out and spend way too much money on just trying to see if you enjoy this, because you may start it and think never again.
Robert, do you have an entire tree of Chrismons, or do you have Chrismons plus other ornaments?
Let's put it this way. If I kept all the ones I made, I would have 2 trees. But no, I actually only have about 9 or so myself, and so I mixed it in with other ornaments. I would like an entire tree. My goal is to make a Jessie tree, or sort of an advent calendar Jessie tree set for myself. The other thing is there aren't cross stitch patterns for all of that, so I have to create them as well, which I'm hoping to do as well. So it's just, I'm still enjoying it, so I'm taking my time.
But you were doing needlepoint, not cross stitch, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I think that would be a nice tradition, maybe to start for my grandchildren. That would be a nice,
It's nicer to do or it's easier to do than a needlepoint stocking.
oh yeah, no, I'm not doing that.
My sister is not religious, let's say, and so for Christmas, instead of making her Chrismons, I did just little ornaments with their initials on it. Used the same size frames. I made them green with silver lettering, and she actually this year put them on the stock. She has those kind of heavy stocking hangers for the mantelpiece, and put them on top of their stocking because they have generic, really pretty, but there's no identification on the stockings. So that's also a fun thing to do, is do people's letters, or if they wanted, they really loved the shell, they could have a little Chrismon on their stocking as well. That's another use of them.
Robert, did you say that these look better if you're doing counted cross stitch? They still look better if you're using needlepoint stitch for the background as opposed to just a cross stitch?
With the I haven't cross stitched in a long time, but the cross stitch fabric does not allow for,
You
you can do a tent stitch on it, which is the background stitch of needlepoint, but it won't look right. I think cross stitch is lovely just as itself, so you just do the design.
Oh, okay.
Because of the difference in canvas, it kind of restricts what you can and cannot do.
Okay. I got a little confused with that. Okay.
Yeah, I just use a cross stitch pattern just as a sample, but if I was to do cross stitch Chrismons, I would just do the design and leave the background blank because it's already white fabric, and it's a lot.
Oh,
It's true.
Yeah.
You can have to fill it in.
yeah. That's
Good question. Oops, yeah.
It does get kind of confusing and I do kind of switch back between some of I've borrowed a lot from both to figure out what works. But what other questions? I know that was sort of a breeze through, but.
Did you say you were you would be happy to share some of those patterns, like the Celtic cross and stuff?
Yes, some of them, like I just didn't have any graph paper with me. Like the Celtic cross came from here, but I had to these are like Christmas monograms.
Oh, okay.
This miniatures as well. They're really just delightfully from the 70s,
they are.
The Celtic cross is here.
Yeah.
Pretty.
But you have to make it read better on a needlepoint pattern, you have to add a few things. But I'd be happy to draw that up and get it out to you.
I mean, I have needlepointed right now. I'm more into counted cross stitch.
Mhm.
So that's fine, but I just sort of need to know how many squares I need to cover,
Yeah.
and where I need a single line, that type of thing.
So if you want this if you want it for cross stitch, I can go photocopy this and email it to you.
That would be wonderful.
Yeah, I can easily do that. So for needlepoint,
Diane, would you like it for counted cross stitch?
I would, please.
Great. I will generally, out of respect for artists, I try not to copy patterns, but
Right.
We'll keep it in-house.
I think we'll be fine. I don't even know if you can find this anymore, but this has got a great, and it's a big variety. There's a heart. There's one I haven't done that I was hoping to complete this year, but there's a Torah as well, which I think is lovely for, for as much as Jesus quoted the Old Testament. Oddly enough, in all of my sets, there's no Bible to Chrismon, which is always a good one to have. And the nice thing about these is, if you'll see, this is a Noah's the Ark, and it includes stitches you can't do in needlepoint, you can only do in counted cross stitch. And so there are some things I can't do in needlepoint that I wish I could. Like it's like a lot of overlay stitches. Like the Crown of Thorns also has that. So y'all will be able to take advantage of it a bit more than I would. So yeah. So that is the short and skinny of Chrismons in needlepoint en point. But if you have any questions, please let me know. And if you'd like to do a kit, I can absolutely get those together. in the next few weeks. I will have my preference.
To work on for next year.
Yeah.
Right.
Hey, for some, it will take a full year to do a 2.5 by 2.5 Christmas. And there is no shame in that. I've had this one going, I think, for 3 months. So
Okay.
And which one is that, Robert? Will you hold that up again?
this one is the Jerusalem cross.
Oh, I love that.
And the other nice thing I do, where is it? I have a whole book. I ordered it. It's ridiculously expensive for how tiny it is, but it's a whole book on Christian symbols, and some of them are medieval. They're different crosses of different saints, symbols that we typically do not see that are also fun to kind of take and figure out how you may translate them into, embroidery or needlework. So that's sometimes a fun place to find inspiration for something a little different. So if you don't see something you like, I probably have it. So, well, great. Well, thank y'all for this. As I said, just email me any questions, and it's kind of hard. If you want to meet outside real quickly, we can always wear masks and I can help get you started. Mary Margaret and I were doing it by the pool earlier this fall, so I'm trying to get her hooked for sure.
Well, thank you so much, Robert. It was
Thank you.
Thank you.
very,
What a wonderful
Interesting.
idea and a great COVID activity, I might add.
yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I got a lot done this spring, so
I bet.
I think the biggest struggle with Chrismons is to do them in time to have them ready for Christmas. So it's 100 degrees and you're thinking about Christmas. That's the most difficult thing about these. But anyways,
Right.
well, great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so
Enjoy.
much.
Thank you.
Good.
Yeah,
Thank
this
y'all
was
so much.
great.
I'm
Thank you.
sure I will see y'all on the Zoom before Christmas. So
Yes.
Well,
Absolutely.
we will.
Yes.
Right.
Thanks for all
you.
you're doing.
Thank you,
Thanks a
Robert.
lot.
have a great day.
Bye-bye.
You
Thank
too.
you.
Good seeing everybody.
Nice seeing you.
Nice to see you all. Mhm.